On this historic day where Judge Brett Kavanaugh will likely be confirmed to the United States Supreme Court and become Justice Brett Kavanaugh, we're also talking about how important this is in the midterm elections and why Democrats, after their shameful, disgusting behavior throughout this entire process, cannot be trusted with power in either the House or the Senate. Now, one of these key districts in the country is Arizona's 1st Congressional District. This is currently represented by a Democrat, Tom O'Halloran, but there is an opportunity for Republicans to take back this seat and elect Wendy Rogers, who is a key conservative Republican from this area. Wendy Rogers joins us now, live on the line. Wendy, thank you for joining us here on Breitbart News Saturday.
Great to be with you, Matt. Thanks so much. Yes.
So I think that there's a major opportunity here in Arizona's 1st District where you could actually take a seat back from one of these radical Democrats that Nancy Pelosi is counting on to take control of Congress. How important is Arizona's 1st Congressional District to this country right now?
Well, as you say, the control of the House of Representatives runs right through my district. I'm speaking to you now from the very southern point of my district down in Oro Valley, which is north of Tucson. My district goes all the way up to the Utah border. It includes the Grand Canyon, and then over to the eastern border where we join New Mexico. So I'll be flying my own airplane later today, to Springerville, Arizona, for example. My district covers 60% of the landmass of Arizona. It is as large as Pennsylvania. I was one of the very first women pilots in the Air Force, and as such, flew the C-141 jet transport back in the day. I served 20 years in the military, as did my husband. I'm a 5th generation career military officer. Our son was the 6th generation. So this resonates deeply with my district. My district actually was won by President Trump. And interestingly, McCain won my district when he ran for Senate against Ann Kirkpatrick, who had been the congresswoman for this district. So this district is very winnable. I am leading actually by 3 points with a poll that was just out published by Breitbart in an article. The poll showed that I was leading by 3.5 points over the Democrat. I want your listeners to know that the DCCC has spent over $1,500,000 against me with TV ads, fake news TV ads about me, and they have not stuck. We are winning. We have grassroots support throughout the district. This is a key opportunity for pickup. I have conducted 55 rallies all over my district, flying my airplane into all of the little hard-scrabble towns and cities. Last night I was in Eloy. We had a great crowd at the Bent Prop Cafe, which is a skydiving mecca in Arizona. And everywhere I go, all of my voters say, no one visits us here. No congressional member has ever visited us here, and no candidate has ever visited us here. But that's what I do. And I won my primary. Your listeners should know that we have a very, very late primary in Arizona. It was August 28th, which favors incumbents because now Arizonans begin to vote in the general election in just a few days because it's a month lead up to the regular November 6th election by mail. So there's precious little time for someone like me, who's an outlier, who's a challenger, to gather support between the primary and the general. Only 6 weeks to raise effectively $1 million to go against a Democrat who had no opponent in his primary. And let's talk a minute about my opponent. He is a ghost. He's a first-term incumbent, no-name Democrat who has gone along with the liberal agenda. He voted against the tax cut. He would most assuredly vote for impeachment of our president. He tries to cast himself as a moderate, but he's anything but. And he actually, I don't even know how you do this. He started out as a Republican, then became an independent, and now he's a Democrat. So he's all over the map, trying to be all things to all people. He's no good to us, and I'm going to take him out. And we have a fabulous outpouring of support from throughout the district. And really, this comes down to the fact that our nation is on the right track. We're coming back from the brink. People have hope again. I'm a small business owner myself. The election really comes down to whether or not we want to promote the good news and the prosperity started under the Trump administration, or regress back to the way things were. And every rally that I conduct, and I'm doing one in an hour, I tell people the good news. I tell people that job openings, climbed to a record 6.9 million, that stocks have reached a new high ahead of the record bull market, that household income is increasing up to beyond 61,000 for the third straight year. U.S. GDP up to 4.2%. Railroad companies. My district has Winslow, Arizona, famous in the Eagles song, big railroad city. They're desperate for workers. They're hiring bonuses up to 25,000. We're now the largest oil producer. The jobless claims have fallen dramatically to levels not seen since 1969 when I was in high school. Middle class income hits all-time high, on and on and on. And so I am running to continue this conservative, pro-American job policy agenda of President Trump. And I have to tell you, Matt, I meet families every week who have escaped California and who have moved to Arizona, to my district, because they feel like they're coming home.
So I think it's really cool that you fly yourself around the district to all of these things. And I don't think everybody is familiar with your background as an officer in the Air Force. Can you tell us about your service in the Air Force and your family service in the military?
Well, thank you. Sure. I'm a fifth-generation career military officer. As I mentioned, our son is the sixth generation. He was a Marine officer. I started out, interestingly, as a clinical social worker in the Air Force, and then went to pilot training in Arizona. My husband was an engineer in the Air Force, so I was the flyer, he was the engineer, and we lived probably half of our 20-year careers overseas. We have two children. We had them both when we were in the military, and now we have grandchildren. And this is really a calling. And when one takes the oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, this is a lifelong commitment. And so I feel called to serve now again. I'm a very fit 64-year-old. I fly my own plane. I'm a certified flight instructor. I'm a active member of the Civil Air Patrol, as is my husband. We still run and manage our small business. I still meet payroll every other Sunday night. And this is truly a time where I think we need more veterans in Congress to begin with. Only 18% right now of congressional members have ever served a day in the military. But also we need small business owners like me who see the crushing draconian weight of regulation and taxes. I have to deal with this every day. I'm also a licensed real estate agent, so we have weathered the ups and downs. We own a home inspection company. We have weathered the ups and downs of the real estate market in Arizona, which has been a volatile place for the real estate market. And, we just come back time and time again to what voters want. They want their country back. I am so glad that this Kavanaugh confirmation is going to come through, and that Susan Collins did the right thing, and Lindsey Graham. I had never been a particular fan of either one of them, but, they've come through with the right and proper statements to bring due process and the rule of law back. It's every crowd I go to, they are just hungry for resolute, unflinching leadership and not this go along to get along mentality. I have been, by the way, sued during my campaign. People tried to get me off the ballot, and I won. I have been stalked by two thugs, one from my Democrat opponent's campaign. I finally had to get a restraining order on him, which was served last weekend at my rally in Williams, Arizona, which is the gateway to the Grand Canyon. This arrogant kid who has been dogging me all over my district, up to the Navajo Nation and all the way around, couldn't believe that I followed through and got a restraining order on him, because I'm just not having it. I am not letting these vipers into my nest. I am not letting these people dictate against the fact that we have the right to free assembly and free speech and not to be harassed. Mm-hmm. And I get stalked by George Soros's American Bridge group. There's a thug that tried to get into my event last night. I have to have personal protection. I have to have the police called ahead of time everywhere I go. It is.
This is terrifying. This is terrifying. And if by the way, your opponent tries to have it both ways, right? He tries to say, because I've looked up some things about Tom O'Halloran, right? He tries to distance himself from Nancy Pelosi, yet he's taking the money from the DCCC, which is Nancy Pelosi's blood money, right? That's her ordering that money into that district. He tries to say, when Kathy Griffin endorses him, he says, I didn't want it or need it. But the point is that when somebody like that, by the way, Kathy Griffin of the fame that held up the severed head of President Trump, and that thing that she did was so disgusting. But the point is that they need him in the U.S. House to win, because they need him to get their power for a majority so that they can achieve their agenda, their leftist agenda. So when he goes around the district and says that he's not a part of all of this, that's a straight up lie.
Well, exactly. And he doesn't even really, quote unquote, go around the district. I was up on the Navajo Nation, which, by the way, for your listeners, 25% of my voters are Native American. That's the biggest component of votes of any congressional district, to have be Native American. But here's the thing, especially with the Navajo Nation, they revere veterans because they are veterans. 70% of the Navajo Nation went to World War II. We all have heard of the Navajo Code Talkers, only 9 of whom are still alive. So I'm up there a lot, and they respect and like me. We don't even talk about whether or not I'm a Republican or a Democrat. It's the fact that I'm a veteran and a grandmother. It's a very grandmother-oriented culture. It's a different time zone. It's a different language. And Republicans in the past have just given up on the Navajo Nation, not I. I go there routinely. We are going to go to them on Election Day and ask for their vote. Yet Tom O'Halloran, my opponent, tries to sort of worm his way in. In fact, 3 weeks ago, I was up there for the annual fair and parade, and he crashed a veterans get-together that I was at with a state legislative candidate. And it was just it was very awkward, because he had someone introduce him who kept bad-mouthing President Trump and bad-mouthing the commander-in-chief. You don't do that with veterans. I don't care if they're all Democrats. That is completely inappropriate. And so one of my supporters, who actually worked in government, he's a retired Navajo attorney, and he went up in front of the crowd and told them in Navajo, and he later told me what he had said. He said, I am for Colonel Wendy Rogers. She's the one who prepared your meal today. She's the one who served you your meal today. She understands what service is. This congressman does not. And that's why I support her, because she understands as a veteran that when she goes to Congress, it's about serving us. So he told me this later, and then he looked at me from his wheelchair. He's 75. And he said, and in English, Wendy, I talked to the congressman, and I told him, Congressman, I have written you 7 times in the last year and a half, because I've been in government, and I have wisdom to impart to you. And you never answered my letter. And you know what he said in return? If I'm reelected, I'll get back to you.
That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. So the vitriol that we see from the left, that we see from these people, we've seen it throughout this whole Kavanaugh hearing process. We saw the way the Democrats behaved during all these hearings over the course of the year, right? The FBI hearings and so on and so forth. I mean, what do you can you lay out for us just here the stakes of what's at play here on November 6th? What is at play here? What are the stakes in this election?
Our entire nation is hanging by the slender thread that runs through the House of Representatives, is the way I look at it, and the way all of my voters look at it. They turn out to my rallies in droves. I mean, I will probably have 80 people here in the next hour down at Sammy's Mexican Grill in Catalina, Arizona. I mean, it's a dot on the map. But the feeling in my district is that we are at a pivot point, that the future of the country rests on whether or not our president is going to remain president. And, you know, I tell people we have the Supreme Court, we have the Senate, we have the presidency, but if we don't hold the House, we are in for just a complete devolution and degradation of due process, because exactly what was on display this past week. And I want to tell you a little bit real quick about where I'm going, how emblematic it is. I'm going to Sammy's Mexican Grill because Betty and Jorge Rivas own it. And when Donald Trump was here on one of his candidate visits in Tucson, which is typically a pretty liberal bastion, Betty had a sign in the audience that said Latinas for Trump. So, you know, in his characteristic way, President Trump, when he was a candidate, had her up on stage and said, hey, come on up here. So she came up and he, put his arm around her and showed this sign and showed how great this was. Well, after that, there was this huge hue and cry in Tucson. Oh, we need to boycott Sammy's Mexican. Well, nuts to that, what ended up happening was a backlash. And conservatives from an hour away would drive clear across Arizona, clear across Tucson proper to get to this little Mexican restaurant to patronize it. So now it's the so-called iconic Trump restaurant in the northern part of the Tucson suburbs, and everybody goes there who wants to support them. And it ended up being a good thing for business after it was a kind of a testy situation for them. They were boycotted and everything. And so I have all my rallies down here at their restaurant. And that's what we do. We fight back, and we don't take it anymore, and we give business to people who are there for the right reasons, who love this country, who came here legally, and who create jobs, and who want to have this president remain president. And so that's where we go. I have all my events as often as possible at places that are mutually supportive. And, you know, I'm still probably going to have the police there. And, you know, follow my Facebook, Wendy Rogers, Arizona, all one word, facebook.com, Wendy Rogers, Arizona. And you'll see the pictures that we're going to put up later this afternoon or tomorrow of our rally there. And
that's what I was just going to ask you to finish out here is just where can people go to get involved? What's your website if they so choose?
Yes, it's really easy to remember. My name, Wendy, is just like the hamburgers, Rogers like Mr. Rogers. So wendyrogers.org, O-R-G, wendyrogers.org. I do need donations. I had to spend everything to win my primary, as it should be. And so now we are playing catch-up to defeat O'Halloran, who had no opponent and started out $1 million ahead of me. So anyone and everyone, please help me. This is for the nation. I know you can't vote for me, but I can vote for you. And this is a key seat. There are so few seats where we Republicans can actually take a Democrat out. That's like a win-win. That's like 2 votes in a way. And so it's really, really critical. It's the only one we have in Arizona. I think there may be, 3 or 4 in the rest of the country.
Yeah, there's one in Nevada, one in a couple in Minnesota. That's about it.
Right.
It's very, very tight. Very, very tight. Wendy Rogers, really want to thank you for joining us here on Breitbart News Saturday.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Matt. Thank you.